So we shall then go on to our last speaker, Dr. Jyoti Matalia, who again needs no introduction, who's a consultant ophthalmologist, pediatric and neuro-ophthalmologist from Narayan Nethralaya Hospital, with her amazing list of publications, awards, accolades, and award-winning teaching videos. And she is going to be talking on papilledema, a comprehensive overview. On to you, Dr. Jyoti.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
I'm audible as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So at the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Chitra for this opportunity and letting me be a part of this wonderful webinar. So I'm going to be talking on papilledema, a comprehensive overview. So we are aware that it is a swelling of the optic nerve head secondary to raised intracranial pressure. So it's non-inflammatory and a passive swelling, always bilateral, but could be asymmetrical. Remember, in the absence of a raised ICP, it's only an optic disc edema, which have been talking in terms of optic neuritis and ischemic, etc. But I'll be talking primarily on papilledema. So what are the causes of raised ICP? Mass effect or a space occupying lesion. As you can see, a posterior fossa tumor, or an obstruction of the ventricular system, or a shunt failure, as could be a congenital or acquired lesions. It could be an idiopathic intracranial hypertension, usually idiopathic, but related to drugs, and also associated conditions like venous thrombosis, chronic respiratory insufficiency, and most commonly obstructive sleep apnea, which is a new kid on the block. It's an impairment of the CSF absorption via the arachnoid villi, which could be either secondary to meningitis or subarachnoid hemorrhage. It could be diffuse cerebral edema secondary to blunt trauma. And never forget the severe hypertension, and hence a BP measurement is very, very important in your clinic. So let's summarize the causes of raised ICP into primary, which is idiopathic intracranial hypertension, previously called as PTC or pseudotumor cerebri, but now as IIH. Secondary, which is basically cerebral venous thrombosis, space occupying lesions, or infections. So what is the etiopathogenesis? Now, there's a very good article by Harry, which says that the raised CSF pressure is transmitted through the optic canal into the intraorbital optic nerve sheath. It exerts effects on the axons of the optic nerve at the point of exit from the eye through the lamina cribrosa, causing the fast and slow axoplanic transport to get interrupted, resulting in the swelling. All these causes are the mechanical ones, but the other cause can also be ischemia. So what are the sequence of events in papilledema? Raised ICP, so axoplasmic stasis, therefore optic disc swelling. It can also cause optic nerve sheath distension and choroidal folds or axoplasmic stasis. And all these three can result in venous obstruction and therefore retinal hemorrhages, nerve fiber layer edema, and exudates. In addition, you could also have subretinal fluid and axon compression because of the optic disc swelling can cause hypoxia and gliosis and therefore optic atrophy. And what we need to understand that papilledema eventually can cause blindness, and that is very important as ophthalmologists for us to understand and explain the same to the neurologists and the neurosurgeons. So how would they present? Symptomatically, headache on awakening, transient visual obscuration, so very important history to take when you're seeing a patient, pulse synchronous tinnitus, photopsia, and retrobulbar pain. Signs would be classically in obese females in the childbearing years, visual loss first, then acuity, and when acuity is affected, that means it's a very, very severe condition, diplopia and papilledema, which is the cardinal signs. So let's understand the ocular signs and grades. Classically, for the postgraduates, let's understand you can have the 5 mechanical signs, which are blurring of the disc margin, filling in of the cup, anterior extension of the nerve head, edema of the nerve fiber layer, and finally retinal or choroidal folds. In terms of the vascular signs, it is classically the venous congestion, the papillary and retinal peripapillary hemorrhages, the cotton wool spots, the hyperemia of the discs, and hard exudates. Regarding the grades, you can have early papilledema where vision is more or less same. The cup is also intact and normal macula and normal visual fields. In established, you will see extensive hyperemia, elevation, loss of the cup. There will be patterns, line, flame hemorrhages, cotton wool spots, etc., and enlarged blind spot on visual fields. If it's chronic, then we are going to have drusen-like crystalline deposits. The visual fields begin to constrict, and you can also have optociliary shunts developing. And finally, atrophic papilledema, where the vision is significantly impaired, and you will see gray white disc margins and the discs as well. Now, this is a simplified classification, but you have the classified modified Frisson scales classification, which we use for publication purpose, which are graded into the 5. So how do you work up these cases? First, vision, color vision, and contrast, because it's all related to the optic nerve, and we have to study the function as well. Visual field testing, you can have an enlarged blind spot, or starting with an inferonasal step defect, which gradually goes into a complete constriction, leaving only the central field. And when, as I said, central field is involved, it is like the end stage. B-scan for size of optic nerve head, because we need to really classify enlargement is because of what? The raised ICP. So let me just take a minute to explain why it is important to understand the B-scan role in papilledema. Now you can see here that the CSF is produced by the lateral ventricles, goes into the third ventricle, fourth ventricles, and entirely into the subarachnoid space. And this space is right around your optic nerve head, as you can see here. And it is picking up of this on the B-scan can tell you that the raised ICP is the cause for the optic disc edema. I have described this technique in neurology in India to show how the presence of the crescent, the hypoechoic area around the optic nerve, and an enlargement more than 4 millimeters indicates that there is actually a papilledema, that is a raised ICP as a cause of the disc edema. And also in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine, where you can follow these cases, and over time, the B-scan can tell you reduction that this papilledema is actually resolving, because it's unlikely to do MRI scan for all these patients. So once you've done the B-scan, then we have to find out the other causes. So MRI to rule out the mass or ventricular involvement of the ventricular involvement due to hydrocephalus. MRV, very, very important for venous thrombosis, because as I said, it's a secondary cause. LP for opening pressure to confirm the IIH, and definitive is anything more than 250 millimeters of water. CSF analysis to rule out the other causes. So how do you manage these cases? Papilledema, investigate first. Ocularly, B-scan to confirm that it is a raised ICF.
1 minute remaining.
Looking at the presence of SAF. Imaging, important to know how extent involvement is happening, and visual fields. Non-ocular is record BP in all your cases of bilateral disc edema. Neurological evaluation, neuroimaging, and look at the CSF opening pressure. Treatment would be then depending on addressing the cause for the raised ICP, medical and surgical. In medical, if it's IIH, oral acetazolamide, which starts with 1 gram, and you can increase, with 250 milligram BD initially, and can increase to 2 grams. And even in fulminant cases, where there's a sudden loss of vision, it can be as 4 grams per day. Salt restricted diet, weight loss. In CVT, you have to give oral anticoagulants. Surgically, if there's a mask, yes, neurosurgical intervention, but watch if your papilledema is reducing or not. If it's purely IIH, VP or LP shunt, or serial lumbar punctures. And finally, if vision is threatened, ONSF, and as ophthalmologists, that is what we can do. A quick technique of showing, I do the medial transconjunctival approach. As you can see, disinsert the medial rectus muscle, retract the globe laterally, and then you go and see the nerve sheath in your medial intraconal space. You go there and you just release the pressure. You can see the gush of fluid here. This is the decompression, followed by a nick you make into your sheath, and then use a blunt instrument to completely break the adhesions, because in chronic cases, that is significantly developed. So in a patient like this, preoperatively with 6/36 vision in both eyes and a significantly constricted fields, you will notice that after ONSD, the nerves come totally flat by 4 to 6 weeks, and the vision comes back to normal, with the fields almost normal by about 6 months. Hence, I want to end by saying the follow-up of these patients, you have to look at the visual field status and the papilledema grade, which could be atrophic, mild, moderate, and severe. So the visual field status could be normal visual fields, affected but improving, affected but stable, and affected but worsening. So in cases where there's a mild grade with normal fields, we can have 6 monthly follow-up. Moderate, a 3 months follow-up will do. When the visual field is significantly affected, which will not be in atrophic cases, you follow them again 3 monthly for mild cases, and 1 to 3 months for moderate and severe cases. Affected but stable, then we have to do a shorter follow-up. But in severe papilledema, it should be within 3 to 4 weeks and need to monitor, because we don't want the patient to lose vision. As I said, that even if the only thing the patient can actually lose and go completely blind, and then it's irreversible. And finally, with affected but worsening, you need to follow them closely. And this patients will need ONSF if it is not getting controlled over 4 weeks of any treatment, medical or surgical. And remember that even in atrophic cases, you need to induce, you have to do ONSF, because I've seen patients, if not improving better, at least counting fingers and all, the vision remains stable for life. So thank you very much for your patient listening.
Wonderful talk, as always, Dr. Jyoti. It was a truly amazing talk. So I have just one question for you. Is it possible to do a unilateral optic nerve sheath fenestration to resolve papilledema on both sides?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, There are certain cases where you may have asymmetric involvement, where one nerve has got more because of one equal involvement, but one visual field severely affected. So in those cases, I would only do in one eye, and by 6 weeks, the other eye also gets involved. However, you need to monitor that during this time, if the other field gets worsened or the vision drops, we can go in and do the visual ONSF in the other eye. But yes, unilateral is the treatment of choice. But when patients come to me are in a very severely affected bilateral involvement, in that cases we do at the same in the same sitting.
Murli, Rohit, any questions?
Yeah, Dr. Jyoti, what is your guideline on the B scan? Is it a transfer scan or a longitudinal scan?
Yeah, it's a vertical transfer scan that I do to just get the cross section of the optic nerve head, and right beyond it, I look for the hypoechoic crescent. Now, there are a lot of techniques of how to do and what to do. So my idea is just to detect whether this patient has papilledema, in the sense the optic disc edema is related to the raised ICP, because you will see the hypoechoic crescent only in patients who have raised ICP. If I've done it in patients who have ischemic optic neuropathy and optic neuritis, you will not find that. So this is a way. So my idea of doing B-scan is just to detect it and sequentially follow up these patients, so that post-surgery, when this particularly flattens, I know that even if the axoplasmic status is not gone away, since the fluid behind the nerve has disappeared, eventually the nerve is going to be flat. The other advantage of B-scan is that in patients who have a recurrent edema, where you cannot see really the disc edema because of gliosis developed, if there's fluid behind it, which I can detect on a B-scan, I know that we need to continue the treatment further. So those patients for a recurrent cause can also be followed up on B-scan.
Wonderful. Anything else to ask, or shall we conclude? I think it has been truly an amazing webinar. I'm sure each of you would have felt it, and I think I wouldn't even sleep when I keep going through all the wonderful talks and the amount of variety of information I heard today. I'm sure this kind of information transfer would have been of great use to all of the attendees too, would have watched it. Thank you so much, expert panel. Thank you so much, wonderful set of speakers which I've had. And of course, thanks a billion to my co-moderator Murli, who really forces me to read so many articles before I sit with you all in each of these webinars, and I'm constantly thankful to him. And of course, my thanks are due to my ARC panel and who are always there behind me. My thanks are due to Kripal and his AIOS team, Sai and Manjula from Numerotech, for all those numerous mails which fill up your inboxes, which keeps giving you information about our ARC activity. Thanks so much, Dr. Anand and your team, for the kind of support which you keep giving us so efficiently week after week. And our immense thanks are due to NTOT for sponsoring most of our webinars. And that kind of comfort which I get by knowing that they are always there to back us up is a huge, huge relief for me. And of course, thanks are due to all attendees. Even this webinar was nicely attended, keeping in mind that this is essentially for a very niche audience. And that strength of their participation is what which keeps egging us ARC to go forward. Thank you very much, one and all of you. Thank you, and a very happy new year to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. I think from all neuro-ophthalmologists, I would actually thank you for bringing neuro-ophthalmology on center stage, to repeatedly giving us an opportunity to discuss and learn from each other. Something that anyway, even pre-COVID was very less. And in COVID times, thanks to the webinars, we are able to actually meet, discuss, and get a chance to update our information. So thank you, Dr. Chitra. Through ARC, we are really grateful that neuro-ophthalmology as a specialty has now come center stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye, and good
Stay
night.
safe, all of you.
Thank
I
you.
mean, everybody spoke so amazingly well. It was like, it's a common appreciation. And my husband is going to really get bored, because I'm going to go back and tell him what a webinar it was. And it's going
Ask
to be
him to attend it next time.
I know. I
Give him
wish.
a talk.
No, I wish many more people attend all these meetings, and such a useful thing it is. Very gainful. Thank you. Bye.